Welcome all. We'll be starting in few minutes as speaker would be joining. So meanwhile Vijay gets connected, we have a very short video on customer identity and access management.
Customer identity and access management enables businesses to manage customer identities and provide a secure and personalized digital experience, leading to higher customer retention. Most modern businesses are adopting CIM solutions, like Mini Orange, for multiple reasons. Deliver an enhanced user experience with single sign-on, which will enable your customers to log in to multiple apps using a single set of credentials. Multi-factor authentication adds an extra layer of security to your customers' accounts and login process. Adaptive MFA, an advanced form of MFA, enables you to set restrictions on user access based on contextual factors like network, location, device, and time. Passwordless authentication enables your customers to log in seamlessly without passwords and via other methods like OTP over phone, SMS, email. Social login enables your customers to seamlessly log in using their existing social credentials via popular social media platforms like Google, Facebook, etc. Balance the usability and security aspects. Prevention of data breaches. Adhere to regulations and compliance. Let's take a few examples. Minimalistic Mia is a regular customer of an e-commerce business who finds managing multiple passwords irritating. If Mini Orange CIM is integrated, then Mia will only need to remember one password to log in to all the different apps using SSO functionality, or the passwordless authentication method can enable her to get authenticated via OTP or other ways. Social Selena is a social media junkie who only remembers social media credentials. To make her experience, Mini Orange CIM will enable the e-commerce business to provide social login options. Hence, she can easily authenticate herself using her existing social accounts on Google, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Radical Rhonda is always radical about security, and to win her trust, the Mini
Hey Vijay, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Yeah. For some reason, I was on earlier, but I didn't think you were able to hear me.
Correct. So glad that you accepted our invite, and it's thank you for accepting this invitation for this conversational webinar, and would like to really thank you for this opportunity to discuss the Colibri group experience, the enterprise architecture, pain points, and similarly our audience also wanted to have a overlook on consumer identity and access management. Vijay.
Sure.
Okay, so we are starting with the webinar. I would like to thank all the participants, our audience who has joined for this webinar on behalf of Mini Orange family. This webinar is about the experience what Mini Orange has given with respect to offering as a CIM to Colibri Group. In the call, I am having Vijay Mandava, who is Senior Director of Enterprise Architecture and Platform Engineering at Colibri. Once again, we would like to welcome Mr. Vijay, and it is better if we start the conversation from talking about Colibri Group. Vijay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. So Colibri is a professional training company. Basically, we sell courses for folks who want to be a certified real estate instructor or a real estate broker, or in healthcare, in nursing, in financial services, to be a certified financial planner. And we also have an education where if you want to be accredited as a teacher and go to grad school, we have so we we have a SaaS platform that it's multi-tenant. We support, millions of customers, both B2C and B2B.
Great, glad to know that. Vijay, also, when we talk about your profile, you have very deep expertise and experience when it comes to the enterprise applications, putting the security measures. So, can you just brief about your experience in this enterprise level?
Sure. So I've been, working with various enterprise architecture groups, managing them, and being a member of those. And in terms of security, we had to, support single sign-on. We had to support multi-factor authentication. We had to integrate applications, custom homegrown applications with existing customer base, migrating from one security platform to the other. So I have had, multiple scenarios where we used, Oracle Security Stack, other competitors of yours on the SaaS space before I joined Colibri.
Great. So let's start our conversation by asking me that when you have joined Colibri and when you are looking for various IAM vendors who can provide you the seamless solution, what's your first experience? What's your first thought about, the players which exist in the market, and how your journey, because as you are sitting in US, you have many homegrown companies who provides a seamless CIM. So how, with n number of vendors you had on board, what's your journey basically that you have decided to go with MiniOrange?
Sure. So before we landed on MiniOrange, right, the first thing we did was, captured our SSO requirements. So for me, the most important thing was interoperability and support of standards. So we are a house of brands, right? So every brand was doing authentication within the application itself. So for us, we wanted to go into this model where we can cross-sell and upsell across brands. So having a user, navigate across brands without, having to re-log in, that was the key, right? So for that, the general way to get that interoperability is to adopt standards. So the key requirements for us is a company or a partner that provides us the OIDC, JWT, SAML, support straight out of the box, so that tomorrow we can, move towards social login registration support, right? So the vendors that once we captured the requirements, we did, technical demonstrations with, various vendors such as Auth0, OneLogin, and the other one I could recall is AWS Cognito, and we also looked at Duende software. That's a library-based approach, and the .NET app. So our company is predominantly .NET from an API development perspective. So Duende software uses identity server, but this is more a library-based approach. And then we also looked at legacy, systems such as CAS, where we could have a vendor, provide managed services. So when I looked at all of those, right, and my business also wasn't very keen on doing a big bang approach, meaning, migrate all my 6 million user base that we have across brands onto this new security platform. So it was very important for us to have a coexist strategy where I can take brand by brand and still support our existing business, right? So among those 4 vendors that I talked about, So at that time, Mini Orange wasn't even on my radar, right? So the one that I was leaning towards was with the identity server approach, because that was the only one that gave me this coexist path. Everybody else was, I need to migrate all my user base, as a big bang approach. Not very flexible in terms of, giving me that flexibility to support this coexist strategy. So with a library based approach, it is more effort on our side, but I thought that was the only path. And all of those other ones also had their licensing model was monthly active users, and it was, for a internet, customer facing application. We are a mid-tier company, $400 million revenue, and we're not going to spend, $5 per user, which is how, these licenses can come to. So that's why I was leaning towards, building our own on top of identity server. That's when I ran into Mini Orange. I felt the price point was reasonable, and that's how we did a proof of concept working with Krishna and the engineering team, and after a very strenuous set of use cases were tested out, and after that we felt comfortable. And we also pivoted in terms of deployments, and I can talk through that journey, but that is how we landed with
As rightly pointed out, I think, Vijay, we also had a similar experience when it comes to the enterprise customers, because generally enterprise customers are always holding some existing infra, legacy system. And when you're talking about the scale of 5 million to 8 million kind of users, it's not easy to revamp the entire infra. And most of our competitors generally ask for revamping the structure, which generally, as an enterprise customer, it is very difficult, to tend towards. And I think that's where we generally sit with the enterprise customers, talks a lot about their design decisions, and that's where our expertise comes in, that we add value on top of the existing infra, which I think most of the company tend to move towards. So am I right in the approach that most of the enterprise are looking for not revamping their entire infrastructure, but putting something add-on so that they can increase the value of their system?
Absolutely. Yeah. So typically, right, applications that were built, pre OIDC, right, they were either completely proprietary or they were using SAML for the single sign-on approaches, right? But then with the new mobile applications and with the single page apps, JWT and OAuth became easier to implement, but you already have a large customer base, right? So for folks who are starting out, right, it's a very easy, just use your connectors, use your plugins. It can be a very easy approach, and the going from use case inception to production is much faster going that route versus our scenario where we have millions of customers, and business isn't willing to do a big bang approach, and that has its own merits, right? Because there was a lot of customer service impact when we changed the authentication system. So a lesson learned for us was, I'm glad we did the brand by brand approach rather than put all our millions of customers, because that would have jacked up our customer service calls even more.
Correct. So for the audience, I would like to clear a few stuff that Colibri is Mini Orange customer, and currently Mini Orange seamlessly give experience to their 6 to 7 million users who actually log on to their learning systems. And wanted to understand, Vijay, why managing identities is very important as a edtech brand or as a brand where millions of users are coming onto the platform. Why someone cannot have a database, and in that database they will simply manage the identities? Why they should go for federations or provisioning into an IDP kind of scenario?
Yeah, so very good question, right? So if you have multiple systems in place and if you are integrating with other applications, that is when single sign-on is needed. And if we are not following standards, every integration has to be done in an ad hoc manner, which will make your code very fragile. So I'm a big believer in leveraging standards. So as you know, we were also on this journey of moving from a monolithic architecture to a more microservices based approach. And if your company is already on that path, why not take the authentication piece that you are managing along with your business logic in your application database, move that out to a authentication service, and that is responsible for your password resets, your making sure your passwords are secure, rotating of passwords so that your company policy of every 3 months the user is changing their password. All of those can be removed from your custom business application, and separation of concerns can help. And then the other approach that we have taken is 5 years from now we might not use Mini Orange, so we have multiple applications that are integrating with this authentication provider. So 5 years from now, we don't want to change all those applications. So instead, we follow an abstraction framework. So we built our own ID broker, which is identity broker, which is an abstraction to Mini Orange, so that tomorrow, if we have to change, we'll only have to change the ID broker. My rest of the applications can exist as is.
Perfectly said. So I had seen your architecture. It's very unique in the say that you have a ID server where you have your own mechanism of storing the attributes of the users and many more stuff, which is not visible to the OEM like us. What you basically do is you migrate that server or jump server to the Mini Orange. And I think similar kind of architecture do exist for most of the enterprise customer. In your scenario, it is ID server. In someone else scenario, it might be someone, some other server where the attributes and parameters are different. But what is interesting to find out is, are there any, does this migration took a lot of efforts from your side, or was it seamless?
I mean, the migration journey was a long one, over 6 months, but it has nothing to do with Mini Orange. It has more to do with our existing user base. Since we are a customer-facing website, people forget that I already have an account, and people create another account. So we have a lot of duplicates in our student database. So and deduplicating that was a prerequisite for us before we can migrate the users to Mini Orange. So that was the other benefit, that having this abstraction of ID broker in between helped us deduplicate the users, track if this user is migrated yet to Mini Orange or not, and then the other aspect that I would say is, even though Mini Orange supported custom attributes, we didn't want Mini Orange to hold non-identity related attributes.
Correct.
Like our students' license numbers and enrollment details. Mini Orange is just identity profile, right? But then we have our own profile repository, which has the student's mailing address and all these other aspects of it.
Correct. And I will just share your architecture also, but before that, you are having multiple brands, and that all brands generally comes with the different databases, and in different databases there would be you need to implement the entire flow. So I think what you have chosen, the architecture, that if the user in landing in any of the brand, the process remains same. You have reused the entire flow. You have not created the flow for every database or every brand. I think that is the way moving forward for a seamless experience what user can get with respect to architecture. Would you like to share a thought on that, Vijay?
Yeah. So we also had another regulatory requirement where any support engineer supporting this application has to be within the United States. So both those requirements made us pivot our deployment strategy to we worked with Mini Orange Engineering to provide us a Docker container, and then we host the Mini Orange Docker container on our AWS VPC. So the picture that you're displaying here for the audience is our Mini Orange architecture here at Colibri. So basically we have any number of applications. Once they are trying to log in, they go through the ID broker, which is where we do the checks on, is this user already migrated? If this user is migrated, we will forward them to the Mini Orange login screen where they put the username and the credentials and get authenticated by Mini Orange. But if the user is not migrated yet, we will let the user put in their username and password. We authenticate it against our database, and then we, through an API, provision this user in Mini Orange with that user ID and password, and mark that the user is migrated, so that the next time they log in, they will be logged into Mini Orange. So every brand will have its own look and feel, but the structure and everything is still the same.
Correct. So I think handling 6 to 7 million users on a given day seems to be more challenging if we do not have proper architecture in place. Am I right, Vijay?
So we have a 6 million user base, but our monthly active users is in the tens of thousands. But even with that, we had to, so the Mini Orange app server cluster that we have configured, has auto scaling enabled, and the database is a reader writer architecture, so that we can load balance the read calls versus the write calls. So when we initially started, the way Mini Orange implementation was that even the readers were going into the same writer instance, but later enhancements were done so that now readers and writers are load balanced.
Correct. And wanted to understand, are there any plans now to make the user experience more seamless, or to have more kind of layered approach now? For example,
So our next phases are adding more brands, then adding multi-factor authentication, adding social login. These are the other phases that we have on the docket.
Great. So I think the conversation what we had currently is, I can feel that the crux is you should have a central repository for integrating any security solutions or managing identities, very, very critical. And on top of it, I think managing them seamless, so that you should have proper checkpoints in the place is the way forward, right?
I agree.
Okay, great. And would like to know, being into this enterprise field from last 15, 20 odd years, have you come across any other platform which has similar capabilities when it comes to the, managing different IDPs, different applications, and where it needs to have a lot of customization? So, from the audience perspective, um, is it possible to build such kind of architecture in-house or with the open source?
Yes, it is possible, but I would, lean towards, focus on your business and let the plumbing infrastructure products be, worked on by specialist companies. Like I said, right, we were initially going to use Identity Server, which is more a library-based approach. And there are other open source tools, CAS, I mentioned that. And in my previous experiences, the Oracle security products were what we used, for fine-grained authorization, for single sign-on through SAML. Security is a complex space, and this is one of those that you cannot do an MVP and keep upgrading. Day one in production, it has to be rock solid. So that's so based on that, I wouldn't recommend starting from scratch and treating it like, hey, I need to own this tech stack start to finish.
Correct. So why, Vijay, I'm telling you, because as an OEM, this is our pain point. When enterprise customers like yours comes to us, they talk about the open source implementation. They talk about the various extensive feature set they are adding every month, and we try to convince them. We try to engage with them, saying that this is not the way to go forward based on the timeline and the user base you are having. But generally, they tend to push towards that. They spent around 7, 8 months in that, and then they come to us saying that no, it's not working for us. So let's have a solution in the place. So that's the reason I have asked you this question. That we see a lot of challenges when it comes to the telling to the customer that this is the third party solution and it is the way moving forward, because we do a lot of rigorous testing of the feature set. We are only there to support this kind of use cases, instead of just releasing features without testing every month. So I think that's where I think the crux lies, Vijay.
Yeah. So I think people are very comfortable with integrating SaaS applications and enabling single sign-on across multiple SaaS applications with their, for their internal employees, right? That there are multiple products in that space where you can do that without any engineering help at all. But if you are taking a customer-facing homegrown application and try to set up single sign-on with those, you cannot do that with zero coding effort. You cannot do that with the connectors that are provided from any vendor. So you have to be ready for engineering effort and when you're touching a customer-facing feature such as passwords and usernames and things like that, there are all these other non-vendor related but your enterprise specific concerns, and those are the ones that I listed earlier, which is your data is not clean, you have duplicate customers. So all that cleansing has to be done, or you're going to end up with bad data in your new authentication system. So those are the things that take time, more than the technical integration with
Correct.
any vendor.
So we had a very recent experience with one of our enterprise client, and he was looking to implement the CIM kind of scenario, and he had a team of around 6 to 7 people. But we try to tell them that you are not the IM company, you are consumer oriented company. That's your USP. So you should concentrate on fixing those instead of investing your time, gradual time, over the period of time, and might be the solution after 6 months of time would not be as stable as what we can give, because our job is to provide the secure solution. That's what we do 24/7. And as you rightly mentioned that managing identity is far crucial. They can be mistaken identities. Vijay 249, Vijay 345, he's the same user, but don't have the same nomenclature across it, which the problem is simple, but that might create the endless loop. And there are so many checkpoints when we do the testing, when we talk about the design. So I think somewhere the customer, consumer also need to understand that if we collaborate, we can move forward. So before coming towards the end of this webinar, I would like to tell to the audience participants that if you have any questions, you can ask in the chat or Q&A section. If you want to interact with Vijay about the architecture or any point in the consumer identity and access management, please raise the hand. Our team will ensure that you will get the proper time and ask a question to Vijay or to our team. Just towards the end of a webinar, Vijay, I would like to understand from you, being from the OEM side, we always tell to our customer that this is our USP. These are our core strength. But would like to understand from you that during this journey with you, with MiniOrange, which points you felt that this is the bingo? This is the thing I was looking for, and this is where you could certainly feel that MiniOrange is the way forward for any enterprise customers.
Yeah, great question again. Like I said, MiniOrange was not on my short list before. I've never heard of MiniOrange. I was leaning towards, we are an AWS shop, and I said we are a .NET shop. So AWS Cognito and Identity Server, those were the two things that were top of my list. But then AWS Cognito did not support the standards comprehensively. Identity Server was a library-based approach, so I had to build more infrastructure. I ran into MiniOrange when we were looking at a learning management system. We have a homegrown learning management system. We were looking at, hey, can we buy a commercial learning management system so that we can focus on content and not spend time on building an LMS? Docebo was the learning management system we were looking at. Then when I was looking at single sign-on approaches with Docebo, I saw this MiniOrange blurb about connected to Docebo.
Yeah.
That's when I looked, okay, this looks interesting, so let me double click on MiniOrange. And that's when I saw the documentation, and I saw the various connectors you have for SAML and for OAuth, and then the out-of-the-box connectors for Shopify and these other SaaS products. So that's when I hired a solution architect to, hey, let's do a proof of concept. Here are the use cases that we want to test out. So we worked with the Mini Orange team on that, because the POC had to be rigorous, because I've never heard of Mini Orange.
Correct.
So yeah.
So yeah, and I think it's the same story, not now, but 3-4 years back with all of our customers. But when they saw the POC, when they saw, like in your case, it was Krishna, Nachiket, who has supported you, and when they actually see the solution working seamlessly, you people becomes our brand ambassadors. So I remember when we go on a call, we proudly say that Colibri is a brand which uses Mini Orange, and we can able to manage 5 to 6 million users. Similarly, we have Al Nadi, which consumes around 6 to 7 million user licenses with Mini Orange. And to tell you, Vijay, and the audience, we reached 18,000 customers globally last month. And I am being the frontliner for accessing, securing their identity and access management. So we are a company which is into the identity and access management, and we have a solution which talks about n number of facets, which include single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and provisioning, identity brokering, and also the privilege access management. So if anyone of want to understand more about Mini Orange, do reach out to us. Now it's a very interesting time where millions of cyber attacks are happening on the systems, and you cannot replace IAM. You cannot have an alternative to identity and access management, because everything starts with the identity. Everything starts with the authorization. So I think that's the crux of our conversation. So once again, Vijay, I would like to thank you for accepting our invite, sharing the valuable thoughts. I know the time is not sufficient, because I had seen your architecture. It's so beautifully crafted. Your ID server, your various web flows, and everything. So would like to transfer the call to the participants if they have any questions. Any questions from the participants? Yes, so let me check. Yes, Nitesh.
Am I audible to you?
Yes, Nitesh, you're audible.
Okay. So just a little question from Vijay, that if we so I just have a question. If SSO is the thing that we need to keep in mind before creating the architecture of system, or we can handle that on the after stage. So as you have mentioned that you have increasing your brands, including in your system already. So you have the previous, before creating the architecture, you have in mind that you are being able to do the SSO, or is in the after stage you have integrated that?
Yeah. Hi, Nitesh. Yeah, thank you for that question. So our goal is to get to single sign-on. So if you are currently managing authentication within your application database, even if you don't need to do single sign-on, there is value in taking that authentication piece, moving that to Mini Orange or any other product like that, so that you don't need to worry about password reset and add social login tomorrow, or multi-factor authentication, or OTP. All those features you can get from the product. And tomorrow, if you acquire a different company, or if you want to have another application integrate with this application, then you can enable single sign-on by making both of these as Mini Orange aware applications.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nitish. There is one more question in the chat that do you have a partner network if you want to procure Mini Orange via any local partners? As mentioned to you, the question has been asked anonymously. So we have 18,000 plus customers globally, and we have strong partners distributor ecosystem across the globe. So do reach out to us on idpsupport@securify.com or visit our website, find your region, and then you will find the local partner also there. In that. There is one more question for Vijay in the chat, which says that do you find any drawbacks with Mini Orange you have been facing lately? Is the service reliable enough?
Very good
So
question.
I'm excited to listen.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned one of those earlier, right? One was, we built a reader-writer architecture for our, Postgres cluster in AWS. And when I saw that the CPU on the reader was, very, very low, like, 1%, while my writer was getting all the load, that was a surprise. So that's when, Mini Orange at that time wasn't ready to truly support the reader writer architecture. And to be fair, I mean, none of the legacy, enterprise products, truly ever supported a reader writer paradigm. So that was one issue that I can, remember. Then we also, so one thing, right? We talked about deduplication, right? So one of the calls that we make to Mini Orange before we provision the user is we ask for check availability. Is this user ID already taken? And what Mini Orange has been doing is it loads the entire user with all the attributes and all of that. So the check availability call, its performance wasn't up to par for us. So, we are still working with them. I don't know if they fixed it completely or not, but we had to do a bypass that by doing a check availability ourselves, because this was impacting our user registration timing, right? So as with any enterprise product, what is important is listening to us, understanding why we are asking these features. That was something that the engineering team led by Krishna and Nachiket were there for us and have incorporated into their product.
Okay, great. There is one more question. I think it's more for Vijay and very less for Mini Orange. It says that is it necessary to have authentication mechanism for legacy applications? Because legacy applications generally are the old systems vulnerable to many attacks, and many of the current architectures don't support authentication or authorization. Vijay.
Great question, right? But if your legacy application is customer facing, you have these concerns and you are very vulnerable, and you should be the first one try to have a Mini Orange or some product in between to help you not have to deal with these vulnerabilities. So if you can avoid customer facing interaction with your legacy applications, then do that, right? But then if users have to be authenticated to your legacy applications, then I would say migrate the authentication capability to Mini Orange, so that you can be standards compliant and also be more secure.
Correct. So on top of that, I like to answer that Mini Orange provides a seamless solution for all legacy applications which don't support any standard protocol like SAML, OAuth, or OIDC or JWT. We have a proxy-based solution which will easily enable single sign-on and multi-factor authentication on top of it. So there is question for Mini Orange. Do you have MFA in place for securing our entire infrastructure? Yes, we are the vendor in the market who is having a holistic MFA solution which protects your applications, which protect your VPN, network devices, routers, switches, firewalls, and also your Windows, Linux, RDP, and Mac system. We do support the Radius as well as StackX protocol. So we generally claim that we are the strong vendor in the market who provide holistic MFA solution, which is necessary for the compliance or regulatory perspective. Okay, there is one more question, Vijay. I think if you want to avoid, you can avoid. It says that does Colibri Group feel they have achieved an ROI on their investment with Mini Orange?
So Mini Orange was not about increasing revenue for us. It was more advancing our interoperability is one goal. The other aspect is we also have a brand that uses, I'll just say the name. We use Salesforce Identity, and so basically we are replacing Salesforce Identity with Mini Orange, and we will have significant cost savings by doing that switch, because Salesforce Identity is a lot more expensive relative to Mini Orange.
So I think that answers your question. Might be you can email us, you can describe the use case. Like Vijay mentioned, there are so many Krishnas and Nachiket in our team who can sit with you, have an entire end-to-end discussion, and then come up. We generally advocate. We are advocates of customers, because if we understand the pain point, as Vijay mentioned, that you need someone to listen to them, to listen their pain point, to understand their infra, not to impose our ideas, our thought, our design processes onto the customer. So Mini Orange is the place for all of you guys. So I think that's all with the questions, but very interesting questions, Vijay. I was not expecting that depth to be covered, but I think it was very indeed listening to you talking about your experience, and even the audience with the set of questions they have asked also enjoyed your conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some of the questions like legacy systems and what Nitesh has asked about the SSO being the thing which you need to keep in mind before creating the architecture of the systems, and we can handle that also. One last question, Vijay, curiosity from my side is there any governing law in the US which talks about the data should be present on your server instead of hosting it on the cloud or something?
So Colibri is both a B2C and a B2B customer company. So we have a lot of banks whose employees get trained on our financial services content to become certified financial planners. So every year they send us a IT audit. And one of those questions would be, who are the sub-processors? And the definition of sub-processor is who has visibility to your systems, who has visibility to your data, who is, modifying that data. All of those, come into, play. So that is one consideration, that, and then the other one is we have, just like GDPR, there are, even in the US, California has CCPA and other states are, following, where, we need to delete, customer data if asked. And, with GDPR, data cannot be moved across the pond, right? So the European customers have to be within Europe. So fortunately for us, we don't have any European customers yet. So all of our data lives in, our AWS, US East
Great.
region.
So questions are still pouring in. I will take the
Sure.
last question. So it's morely towards me, but I will point out towards Vijay first, and then I will answer. Is the support really as good as all the reviews say on Gartner Peer Insights of Mini Orange?
Like I said, right, Mini Orange is a small company and growing. We had production support issue once related to license renewal date, and within an hour we were able to get the new updated license. And yes, that 1 hour, but it was so from a production support perspective, are there gaps? Sure. We but then to me, more along with support, having access to a Krishna and Nachiket, that is unparalleled. I mean, having access to engineering, that is more than I expected. So to me, as long as my production support is provided within the 1-2 hours, I mean, we have multiple environments before we go to production. So are there bugs that we found in lower environments that takes multiple days to fix? Yes. If I didn't have those environments and I deploy that to production, then my answer would be very negative.
Correct.
Right? So the onus is on both the customer and Mini Orange to have the proper checks and balances before the stuff hits production.
Correct. So to extend what Vijay has said, if you want to really experience what our review says on Gartner Peer Insight, you give us the opportunity and you can experience the same stuff. You can, discuss your design pain point. And as our founder says always that we are the part of infrastructure, but we want to become a part of the story. So every pain point customer brings in, Mini Orange has a solution, or at least they have an ear to listen to. And if they are capable of providing it, they will surely can. So thank you, audience. Because of the time limitation, we cannot take more questions, but you can write it to us on idpsupport@securify.com, or you can write it to Vijay. I can, redirect it. And thank you once again, Vijay, for all the support you got in starting from inception towards this webinar. I'm sure you also have enjoyed these conversations, and
Absolutely.
really looking forward for another set of webinars where we can discuss something else.
Absolutely.
Related. Thank you, Vijay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Looking forward, guys. Good day. Thank you, Vijay. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.